Sony has announced the launch prices for the A80J OLED, and it turns out that you can actually buy a 65-inch A80J for the same price as a 55-inch A90J. So I'm going to explain the differences between the A80J and the A90J in this video. I'm also going to compare the leaked prices of the LG C1, which is the direct competitor to the Sony A80J. Keep watching. Hello everyone, Vincent from HDTV Test here. Sony has announced the UK launch prices for the A80J OLED. So the 55-inch model will retail at £2,000, the 65-inch model will retail at £2,700, whereas the largest 77-inch model will retail at a relatively affordable £4,200, considering that it's the launch price against other 77-inch OLEDs on the market. Now, if you compare these prices against the launch prices of the flagship top-tier A90J Master Series OLED, you can see that for the price of a 55-inch A90J OLED, you can actually buy a bigger 65-inch A80J OLED. So what are the differences between these two models then? So the A90J will have a higher peak brightness, and that is the most important difference in my opinion. The way Sony has implemented this higher peak brightness is relatively unknown given the company's reluctance to talk about too many things, but at least we know that the company would have installed a metallic heatsink on the A90J, and judging from the power consumption figures, we also believe that the A90J will be using a more efficient OLED panel that has been developed by LG Display. So the metallic heatsink and a newer, more efficient OLED panel combines together to give a higher peak brightness without increasing the risk of OLED burn-in. I know some of you have commented before in my previous videos that you are worried that with a higher peak brightness that is being reached by the Sony A90J, you are worried that the risk of OLED burn-in will increase proportionately, but that is certainly not the case because of this more efficient OLED panel that has been developed by LG Display, and also because of this additional metallic heatsink. It will serve to cool down the panel faster and therefore reduce the risk of image retention and also permanent OLED screen burn. So that is advantage number one of going for the A90J. The next difference would be in terms of the center speaker channel mode. So on the A90J, there are two terminals at the back of the TV in the connections compartment that allows you to connect your AV receiver to the TV and ask the TV to act as a center channel within your surround sound setup. Now, the thing is, when I tested the A9G, I always found that it is difficult to match the timbre and tone of the Sony OLED with my surround sound setup, but maybe your mileage may vary depending on what sort of speakers you have. So maybe that may be an advantage to you if you wish to take advantage of the center speaker mode on Sony TVs. Then you would have to go for the Sony A90J because the Sony A80J doesn't have this center speaker terminal on the back of the television. Next, we go on to some other user interface functions. So the Sony A90J will have a backlit premium aluminum remote, whereas the Sony A80J will only have a standard black remote control. And there is also some differences in terms of the stand design, and this may be of interest to some of you who may only have a narrow AV rack, because with the Sony A90J on the 55-inch and 65-inch version, they will only have a two-way stand which is fairly wide, so you can place the feet beyond the borders of the screen or prop it up slightly to accommodate a soundbar, but in either case the feet are quite wide apart, which will require a wider piece of AV furniture. Whereas with the Sony A80J, there is a three-way stand option, and for the third option, you can actually place the feet in a narrow central position, which doesn't require that wide a piece of AV furniture. So maybe there's something for you to consider if you do not want to splash out even more for a new piece of AV furniture. Of course, this doesn't matter if you are wall mounting your television. And another advantage that the Sony A90J offers over the step down A80J is in terms of the voice control. So the A90J will be equipped with hands-free voice control, whereas with the A80J you have to press a button on the remote control, and hands-free voice control may be quite useful if both your hands are busy doing something else and in the heat of the moment you just can't free them up to press a button on the remote control. So that would be another advantage that the A90J offers over the A80J. And last but not least, there is a slight difference in terms of the size options that are available on both the A80J and the A90J. So both model ranges will offer 55-inch and 65-inch models, but the 77-inch version is exclusive to the A80J, whereas the largest 83-inch version is only available on the A90J. So in other words, if you want a 77-inch OLED from Sony in 2021, you would have to go with the A80J. There is no choice for you to buy an A90J with a 77-inch panel. And on the other hand, if you want the biggest and brightest OLED panel from Sony this year, you will have to go with the A90J, which offers an 83-inch model. So those are the key differences between the A80J and the A90J, and I think that it is going to present a very interesting dilemma to some of you, whether you go for the 55-inch A90J or the 65-inch A80J, and I think that it may make for a very interesting experiment on this channel as well. But I don't think I have the means to actually buy both sets just to compare. So let's see whether we can actually get some units in to compare the 55-inch A90J versus the 65-inch A80J, or would this comparison even be of interest to you, given that they are the same price but of different screen sizes? And let me know what you think, whether you would prefer to go for the 65-inch A80J or the 55-inch A90J. Personally, for me, I think size matters a lot from experience, and I would always go for the bigger panel because I can't see the improvement in picture quality to make up for the immersion that a 65-inch panel can give you, assuming that you can actually accommodate a 65-incher in your living room, in whatever space you are trying to put the TV in, of course. And I think that the higher peak brightness, just talking purely in terms of picture quality, that the A90J offers over the A80J is realistically only going to be realized in a handful of bright HDR scenes, and I think that a 65-incher will always give you that immersion regardless of what scene you watch, assuming you have the room to put up with it, of course. And both TVs, the A80J and the A90J, will have TV-led Dolby Vision, which is an upgrade over 2020 models, and they will have two HDMI 2.1 ports, one of which is eARC, and they will support the BRAVIA Core streaming service from Sony, and they will support Dolby Atmos, DTS, and all the works, so the difference is really only in terms of picture quality, the high peak brightness that the A90J offers. Now let's compare the prices of the Sony A80J versus the leaked prices of the LG C1 that I published over the weekend, and I think that the retailer in question has retracted the prices, which makes it more likely that these are indeed the correct prices. So if you look at this table that I've compiled here, you can see that the 55-inch and 65-inch A80J are going to be more expensive than the LG C1 of equivalent size, but interestingly, on the 77-inch version, the A80J is actually cheaper than the 77-inch LG C1, which apparently has a launch price of £4,500, so it is £300 more expensive. Now, between Sony and LG OLED, they both have their pros and cons. With LG, you will get for HDMI 2.1 ports, you will get VR support, G-Sync, and AMD FreeSync Premium with HDIG support out of the box, so they are really geared for gamers. I think if you are a hardcore gamer who owns multiple HDMI 2.1 gaming sources such as the Xbox Series X, PS5, or maybe some PC graphics card, then I think the LG is probably the more logical choice for you. Whereas I think Sony's advantage lies in its motion handling. But until I get my hands on some review samples, there is no way for me to tell conclusively. For more videos on 2021 televisions, I created a playlist here if you'd like to click on it, and I will see you in the next video.